All right, Isaiah chapter 4, let's call this one a refuge. Understanding that theme came up over and over again in the Psalms, particularly the Psalms of David. However, we see it again here in chapter 4, in a chapter that once again takes the shape of 2 days, not two literal or consecutive days, but 2 days that represent a period of God's judgment. And once again, what seems to be his restoration. When the first day seems to be described in verse 1, carrying over from the days of judgment in chapter 3, he's going to talk about the ways in which Israel is left as a society where the women are extremely successful, or at least successful, materially blessed, but they're struggling to find men, which sounds in some ways similar to times we might not be too unfamiliar with now. However, he's going to say that those days of judgment are going to give way to a day of restoration where those who survive the judgment will seem to finally be able to appreciate peace. Beginning in verse 2, where he is going to talk about the branch, a term that will later be used for Christ himself, is going to be glorious and bear fruit. The fruit that will be able to actually hold its head up about the condition of the nation, as opposed to lamenting, how did we get here? Saying in verse 3, those who remain in Jerusalem will be called holy, reminding us of that theme from chapter 1, that we will not be saved on our own terms. As verse 4 reminds us, it is a day when God will have washed away the filth of the daughters of Jerusalem and cleansed the bloodstains of Jerusalem. Making way for a day in verse 5, where he is going to lead them by a metaphor that sounds an awful lot like the way he led them out of Egyptian captivity, with a cloud by day and fire by night. Quite possibly referring to the way in which he is going to restore, the way in which he is able to lead them in righteousness, because they are once again willing to hear him, as he is hoping to lead them in verse 6 to a place of refuge. Not just refuge, booths to shield them from the sun, as he's going to say it, but refuge to hide them and protect them from the storm. Most likely referring to the storms of life. Which reminds me of at least a couple of things, insofar as he is talking about the remnant that will be called holy, and the way in which he desires to lead them in an era of peace. It reminded me of things that I've heard teachers say from time to time when they talk about the joy of being able to teach gifted students, and not just students who are gifted in terms of their talents, but students who are gifted in their willingness to listen and learn. Understanding that I've heard teachers talk about, even recently, the way in which they find joy in taking a student who doubts themselves to a place where they realize their potential, because they are willing to listen. It seems that in this era that God is promising, this new day, he is refined Israel, or Judah, down to those who are willing to enjoy the peace that he is guiding them into, because quite simply, they are willing to listen. Understanding, once again, a theme that we saw back in the wisdom literature, in the Psalms, the Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. Reminding me of the second thing that caught my attention, that being the quality of the refuge he is providing in this day. God taking Israel from the days when it was a safe place for everyone who hungered and thirsted for getting their own way, to a day when the nation will be a refuge for, as Jesus put it, those who genuinely hunger and thirst for righteousness.